Is environmental change like the weather? Everybody talks about it, but no one does anything? Hello, I'm Chris Edwards. I think it's time for educators to get involved in environmental education. I think study of the Great Lakes system has to be part of the education process. With me today are two people who agree with me, Roseanne Fortner and Bill Stapp. Roseanne Fortner of Ohio State University is widely known for her work with teachers developing Great Lakes curriculum. Bill Stapp's work at the University of Michigan led to the establishment of a number of water quality monitoring projects carried forward by teachers and students.
We depend upon people in our society to make appropriate decisions. I think an integral part of environmental education, as well as other parts of the curriculum, is helping people to become better decision makers and to involve them in practical problems that relate to the environment in their personal lives, in their school, in their neighborhood.
I see the Great Lakes as a microcosm of many of the kinds of environmental issues that the whole world is facing right now. But by looking at the kinds of things that we have locally, we can see the kinds of problems that could face the world as a unit. We also can see the kinds of ways that people could work together.
How is it we can really get environmental educators involved in the process?
I think behind any decision are probably clusters of values. If values are not clear to an individual, then I think a choice today may be in conflict with a choice tomorrow. But strong attitudes and strong values may also affect lifestyle of an individual and how they behave and the questions they ask and what they buy. So I say attitudes and values are important, and then the skills, the problem solving, the critical thinking skills that go along with that. I think those then begin to shape our lifestyle, and through our lifestyle it has a lot of influence on how we behave as individuals. What we buy puts a lot of pressure, I think, on corporations to help them to become more responsible for the environment.
Organizations like the International Joint Commission and our political leaders have been addressing environmental problems for years now. But it seems like often we take a step forward and then we take 2 steps back.
It sometimes does look to teachers as if that we're taking 1 step forward and 2 steps back. We admit that. Some of the problems that are the root of that are based in the curriculum as it has been through the decades in U.S. schools. The problems have been related to strict disciplinarity of the sciences, for instance, because we begin to see things as being present in parcels. We have biology, and then we have chemistry, and then we have physics. And there's very little, if any, effort to relate those disciplines to each other, and even worse, to real things that the student encounters. Things are going on now in the curriculum, though, in curriculum restructure, that offer environmental education a tremendous opportunity for becoming the thread that draws all of those disciplines together.
We've been joined now by Miriam Turner and Ju Cho. Miriam Turner is an instructor at Renaissance High School here in Detroit. At Renaissance, the Rouge River Project has become part of interdisciplinary environmental education. Ju Cho from Taiwan is a graduate student from Ohio State University. Ju, I'd like to ask you, this is obviously something that goes beyond the Great Lakes Basin, but it goes beyond these political borders as well. How is it that you're showing that this issue goes way beyond the Great Lakes shorelines in your work?
Educators and policymakers should work together to make the difference and make the things change. And so I think everyone in the world, besides treating their home as a good place to stay, they should expand their feeling and their love to the region, to the community as their home, to treat the earth as their home. I think this is the major idea of environmental education, to have the sense of environmental responsibility, no matter what corner of the earth you are living.
I think it's really interesting what has been said and just the kinds of perspectives that can come by reaching out to various parts of the world. We're taking multiple schools in the Great Lakes and actually linking schools together. It's called a cross-cultural sister watershed program, which any of the schools, secondary or elementary, can be involved with. What can we do as individuals in our homes, in our schools, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in that regard? And you begin to share information there at that level. And so you begin to share some of our experience in the Great Lakes with also regional institutions in various parts of the world.
Miriam, what is it specifically that your school district has done to show that commitment?
Getting students to know that the environment is a part of their everyday life. Students need to have a critical eye in thinking about the environment. They can't just look at a TV or read a news article or view a movie in my class without having to look at it in various different ways, such as economically, politically, philosophically, as well as their own interests and their own views on a particular topic. It's important that they look at their total surroundings rather than just going to class and saying, oh, this is biology.
We're monitoring the rivers. We're monitoring the Great Miami River, and we're monitoring the Stillwater, which flows into the Great Miami. If we don't have a healthy environment, then we ourselves won't be healthy. And somebody always lives downstream. If this water's polluted here, there might be a community downstream that takes their drinking water out of this river because they don't have any other alternative. So if we pollute our water up here, then that's going to affect somebody else downstream.
Long before the rhetoric of Earth Day was sprawled across sidewalks and clapboards, a group of committed high school students from across Ontario were busy setting up their own initiatives for a healthier environment. Their findings have been published in a book called Visions 2020, Ontario's Youth, Ontario's Future. In it, students have developed specific goals that they believe Ontario should aim to achieve by the year 2020 to ensure an environmentally secure future.
We take out school kids, and it's a 1.5-hour tour in the Grand River, and in exchange the teachers teach 1 week about the Great Lakes.
We just don't seem to be learning that it's not just the birds, it's not just the little animals out in the wetland. We're suffering too.
5 years ago I thought we didn't have a hope in hell. But I think there is such a change that's taken place in the last 2 years. It's really dramatic, and it's really exciting to be a part of that, because I feel I am a part of it. And people are searching for things they can do, and they're coming up with really innovative ideas. And industry is responding by marketing things that are much better.
This net is called a trawl. This works like a big funnel being pulled through the water.
Yeah. 46. No, it's going down.
Drops of our phenol red dye number 2.
Had a good group of 5th graders on today. We went through our entire program here on the water. They collected samples and are just finishing up now, working up the data for the samples they collected.
That's what we were.
I learned about fairy shrimp, I learned about algae, I learned about fish and a lot of neat new stuff.
Most important thing, I believe, is hands-on experience. You just don't read about it in the book, you do it.
We're all having a good time, aren't we?
1.765. I'm from the Cleveland area, so I teach primary age children, so I'm going to try to do some activities on Lake Erie with my primary students and develop some units, but I have to get the sampling equipment, and I'm going to have to talk to our school to be able to fund the equipment so that I will be able to use it with my classes in the future.
What, when you went down farther? You expected much colder. In 7 meters of water, you would think it would get very cold down there. But the mixing is enough. This kind of a field experience is rarely available to teachers, and it's far more important for them to be able to bring the Great Lakes into their classroom rather than bring their classroom to the Great Lakes. Anybody can bring the Great Lakes into the classroom using appropriate materials, creative teaching methods, and a missionary zeal for making it so important to the students that it fits into whatever the curriculum topic is that they're studying.
I really think that education is so important. A lot of things before I got involved in the project I didn't know about, like pollution, like using plastics and using aerosol sprays and how they affect the environment. Now I'm educated about it, I can educate people about it, and I think it's so wonderful. I've changed a lot of my habits. A lot of things I used to buy I don't buy now, and I've changed a lot of my family's habits. Like now, my mother, I tell her not to buy plastic milk containers, buy paper.
Were you really interested in this kind of field before you got into this program in your high school?
Actually, no. I've always wanted to be a doctor all my life. And I didn't know anything about natural resources. I knew about water, but what is water? I didn't know anything about it, but now I'm interested in teaching others about the importance of the environment and how if we don't change our habits, it's going to affect our lives in the future.
There are so many things to be covered. It seems like we're getting fewer and fewer resources and we have less and less time. Bill, is there time to work this into packed curriculum?
There was a great deal of environmental education curriculum material developed during earlier environmental movements in this country, and much of that is still valuable, especially on the basic level of getting to know what the environment is like and what the relationships are. It's also important for them, and more of the new curriculum materials deal with this, to work together for making decisions and solving problems, because that's the way it works in the real world. And so many of the new materials use a collaborative learning approach, where different students become experts on various topics, and they share that information in the problem-solving context.
As we look at science, there are some major goals in the science curriculum. There are major goals in social studies, major goals in humanities or computer programs. But if you look at it another way and say, where do we want our learners to be when they leave the 12th grade? What are our learning goals as these people leave our school systems? And I think if you look at that, some of the major learning goals that are facing society today are the questions of good problem-solving skills, and that's certainly an integral part of environmental education as well as the curriculum itself.
Do teachers really have the background necessary to take us through this process?
Some of the recent research we've done through Ohio State has indicated that teachers place a very high priority on environmental topics in their curriculum. But by their own confession, they feel inadequate sources of their own knowledge for teaching it as much as they would like to. So with priority rankings, they put environment high. With their knowledge ranking, they put themselves a bit lower. They're willing and eager to accept instruction in these kinds of things, and it has to be not just knowledge-based instruction, but providing them with those kinds of things that can assist their students in helping them to learn how to make decisions, how to cooperate to reach a common goal, and what kinds of environmental behavior skills need to be available to those students for different processes to occur.
I'd like each of you to give me one thing, if you could, that would be helpful to both teachers and to communities, something to help them incorporate environmental education into their curriculum. Ms. Ann, I'll start with you. One thing to take away.
Theodore Roosevelt admonished us to do what you can with what you have where you are. This means that one person can make a difference, regardless how small, but a difference. Look for all the tools that will make that one gift possible to you. And the tools are more numerous than you think until you start to begin to dig for them.
It may be a values clarification, the choosing, the prize, and the acting. Whenever there's a choice, values come into play. If you're proud of those, you'll probably affirm those in that area.
One would be to serve as a model to teach in a non-traditional way, to bring the real world into the classroom, because I think that's where the teaching and the real learning takes place. The Rouge River Interactive Program that does that for the students. I don't think that we need a curriculum saying this is an environmental course. I think it should be infused into the total curriculum that includes the dance, the music, the health, not only just in science.
One key issue is to pick up the issue most close to you. That means to select the normal life issue, because you need to teach the student he can make difference, and then they will know their normal life and their normal activity will truly have impact on the Great Lake region.
David LaRoche of the International Joint Commission is with us. David, why is the IJC taking so active a role in encouraging environmental education here?
Well, Chris, first of all, the United States and Canada have agreed to clean up the Great Lakes. And one of the biggest problems in cleaning up the Great Lakes is the problems posed by toxic contaminants. They've asked us to help them. As we've looked at that problem, what we've found is that it's a result of the way we live as a society, the way you and I live, the kinds of things, the kinds of products we insist on having in our cupboards, we insist in using to wash our clothes, we insist in using to spray our homes to protect ourselves against insects. All of those things are the problem that we're confronted with. In November of 1990, educators and people interested in education were able to participate in an interactive exchange on environmental education ideas. The feedback we got was that it was a tremendous opportunity that they wanted to have repeated and hopefully have more of their colleagues in attendance and being able to exchange ideas at a future live satellite conference. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to, in February of 1992, have a second video conference where we have more interaction and hopefully more teachers being able to share with their colleagues and with other people who are truly interested in integrating environmental education not only into the classroom but into their community educational structures outside of the classroom as well. And we're very excited about that. We're looking forward to it. We want to be able to share those ideas that these successful teachers have with thousands of other teachers across the basin, and those thousands of other teachers will be able to work with hundreds of thousands of students in the United States and in Canada, and hopefully we will begin to see the effects of a healthier set of values in relation to the environment, and government won't have to constantly be being targeted as the only group responsible for cleaning up our problems. People are creating the problems. People have to be an integral part in coming to grips with those problems.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Well, it's clear enough, isn't it? Unless people's values include caring for the environment isn't going to be cared for. Policies, rules, and directives will work when all of us accept that reality. Education is the key. This is Chris Edwards. Thank you for watching.
My grandchildren love to go fishing. I'd like to see them be able to eat the fish that they catch. We've done some nasty things to it. We've polluted it to such an extent that now we have to work twice as hard to clean it up.
On the face of the earth, there is nothing quite like it. A chain of lakes vast enough to contain 1/5 of the world's supply of fresh water. 37 million people in the United States and Canada live in the watershed of Lake Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario. The great mass of these lakes provides a lifeline to millions of people, supporting them with water for drinking and meeting the needs of all forms of industry, commerce, and recreation. The lakes have paid a high price for this development. Pollution threatened the very life of the lakes. By the late 1960s, Lake Erie was choking to death from algae growth caused by an overabundance of nutrients in the water. Excess phosphorus from detergents and agricultural runoff caused Lake Erie's water to be robbed of its oxygen. And severe pollution was evident elsewhere.
Most people were simply living and polluting without purpose, but without noticing the effect they were having on the system. And to think that this huge system, that we were able to pollute it to the point where it is a threat to our health, simply that compels us to clean it up.
Something needed to be done. In 1972, the leaders of the United States and Canada signed the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement. This began the process of a coordinated cleanup of the lakes. 6 years later, another agreement was reached to rid the Great Lakes of persistent toxic substances, poisons that remain in the lakes and their food chain for years and years. The agreements are ambitious to coordinate the cleanup of a water system covering 94,000 square miles, or 244,000 square kilometers, and to prevent further pollution. Add to that the need to balance the interests of two countries, along with those of 8 states and 2 provinces. The International Joint Commission helps the governments achieve these goals. The Commission is an independent treaty organization. 3 members from each country try to prevent and resolve issues facing any boundary waters between the United States and Canada. Under the Great Lakes Agreement, the Commission, or IJC, monitors the progress of the cleanup. When necessary, the IJC acts as the conscience of the governments, reminding them of what work still needs to be done in fulfilling their promise to restore the health of the lakes. Some of the pollution problems facing the Great Lakes are system-wide. Toxic pollution continues to enter the lake system from the air, groundwater, and land. Canada and the U.S. revised the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement again in 1987 to more fully address these broad issues. Dozens of environmental hotspots were also targeted by the IJC for specific cleanup strategies. 43 areas of concern have been identified around the Great Lakes and their connecting rivers. Each of these areas has its own unique problems, and in each area, localized solutions are being crafted through remedial action plans. Through these plans, citizens work alongside government and industry leaders to restore highly polluted areas to safe levels.
There's animals that are living there, a lot more fish. Can't eat it, but things are happening. Things are changing.
At the southern tip of Lake Michigan, the Grand Calumet River and the Indiana Harbor Canal showed all of the symptoms of unplanned industrial expansion. The flow of the river was actually altered to accommodate shipping traffic, and businesses and cities discharged effluents into the river without adequate treatment.
I don't think anybody who lived in the area 30 or 40 years ago would remember back and say, gee, that was a good place. It wasn't.
The river was so saturated with pollutants that parts of it no longer contained any dissolved oxygen, which is essential to support life in the water. The bottom sediments in places had become a toxic stew.
They've been dumping in it so long that it really is not a fresh river. It's really sewage. And it's been dumped down so long that people don't see it as cleaning up. But we are.
The majority of the Grand Calumet's flow still comes from the discharges of industries and wastewater treatment plants, but millions of dollars have been spent improving the quality of those effluents. And while the river is still not considered safe for swimming or fishing, look into the Grand Cal and you can see the progress. Fish and wildlife are returning to the river in some remarkable places.
We had a yellowish spots appearing in the disinfection chamber, and we weren't sure what they were, but one thing we did notice is that the algae would not grow where they were.
The East Chicago wastewater treatment plant stopped using chlorine as a disinfectant and instead adopted a non-toxic ultraviolet technology. Officials expected improvements, but they weren't prepared for the discovery in their plant's disinfection chamber. Divers found freshwater sponges, and one surprise led to another. Divers also found the sponges were sharing the chamber with Chinook salmon, which had come to spawn.
I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most shocking, I'd have to put that at about a 9.5.
The sponges may actually be providing a natural enhancement to the water's cleanup. The channel connecting the treatment plant to the Grand Calumet had also begun to display a rich ecosystem.
What we have here is a living model of a system that can be used to restore an impaired environment. It's no longer a theory. The proof exists right here today.
Much more needs to be done to restore the Calumet. The next milestone will be the dredging of the contaminated sediments from the river bottom.
The work is definitely not over. It's going to be a process that I would venture to say will take decades, because as you start rebuilding the ecosystem, it doesn't come quickly.
Lorraine Stasek has lived near the Grand Calumet and Lake Michigan all her life. She's seen the waters decline and now is bearing witness to its restoration.
You see people are working together, and that's what it's going to take, teamwork, to clean it up. I really hope that someday I'll see children laughing and playing along the banks and pointing at the birds, looking at the beauty, and enjoying it, because that's what it's supposed to be used for beauty.
Other Great Lakes communities are celebrating their progress in cleaning up their parts of the Great Lakes watershed. Collingwood Harbor sits on the southern tip of Georgian Bay in Lake Huron. It has the distinction of being the first area of concern to successfully complete its cleanup.
We had documented full recovery of water quality, we controlled nutrients, we cleaned up the sediment, we reestablished fish and wildlife populations.
There were a number of important milestones to the rehabilitation of Collingwood: an innovative method of removing phosphorus from the city's sewage treatment plant, restoration of fish and wildlife habitats, and the removal of contaminated sediment from the harbor. Now the focus is on pollution prevention.
60% of all pesticides are known or believed to cause cancer. We need to ask, how can we control unwanted plants and insects and still care for the health of our lawns, gardens, and ourselves?
Collingwood's success is credited in no small part to that community's fierce sense of pride.
What I don't think is important is the size of the area of concern. It's the individuals, the motivation, the commitment, the passion. I think those are some of the elements.
Since the early 70s, there has been remarkable progress in the cleanup of the lakes. The treatment of municipal sewage and industrial discharges has improved. Thanks to the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement, there's a common set of standards to measure both the problems and their solutions around the watershed.
The International Joint Commission provided this overall framework for the entire Great Lakes area so that people would say we have the same relative set of standards that we have to start shooting for.
Throughout the lakes, waters near urban areas that had been made murky from pollutants have cleared substantially.
The aquatic environment of Lake Michigan is very lively. It's very much alive. It has color. It has texture. It actually is, in most instances, the opposite of the typical public perception of Lake Michigan, that being it's dark, dirty, dangerous, and polluted.
But the job's not done. More than 300 toxic substances have been found in the Great Lakes ecosystem. Chemicals such as PCBs and a variety of insecticides and herbicides belie the beauty of these waters. These invisible toxins still appear in the sediments and in the food chain, and they continue to rain down on the Great Lakes watershed, sometimes being carried from hundreds or thousands of miles away. The danger from these toxins seems to magnify with time. The concentration of the poisons actually becomes more pronounced as the predators consume their tainted prey. Even in remote areas of Lake Superior, far removed from waterborne pollutants, toxins are turning up in the food chain. Airborne pollutants are having an impact on life in the lakes.
People sometimes have a tendency to think that we have solved all the problems, but we have not. The most serious threats now are insidious. They're in the form of toxic chemicals.
Sometimes the impact of these environmental hazards is both obvious and poignant. Genetic defects resulting in the crossed bills of these cormorants and the grotesque tumors on these fish. But some of the pollution has a far-reaching, more subtle legacy. The St. Lawrence River takes the water that flows from the Great Lakes. Hundreds of miles downstream from the lakes, about 500 beluga whales swim in these waters. Biologist Pierre Belland has conducted scores of autopsies on the whales found dead in the St. Lawrence.
And what we have found is that, one, their tissues are loaded with toxics, and two, they have diseases, lesions that are unusual for whales and that are caused by the pollutants in their tissues.
The whales are also experiencing reproductive problems. Some scientists think toxins in the food chain may also be diminishing human fertility. Another long-term study of children whose mothers eat fish from the Great Lakes indicates they are experiencing certain developmental shortfalls that affect their ability to learn.
The researchers have found that the children of the women who eat these fish have some of these subtle learning problems, and they continue to have them over time.
The lakes have also become a battleground for species that have been introduced to the waters from foreign sources and threaten to overrun the native populations. Sporting fish are threatened by parasitic sea lampreys, while zebra mussels multiply at alarming rates. The threat to the Great Lakes fishery is real, and the economic impact has been huge.
They've actually become so abundant and dominant in the systems that they are a major forcing function on what's happening in those ecosystems.
Overdevelopment of the shoreline around the lakes has also left its mark. Wetlands have been lost, which have depleted the lake's natural purifying abilities. And the diversity of plant and animal life is threatened by the loss of habitat. These issues must be addressed to keep the lakes on the road to recovery. Billions of dollars have been poured into cleanup efforts throughout the Great Lakes Basin by both government and industry. And dozens of research projects are underway, which may someday lead to solutions to some of the lingering problems facing the lakes. Much of this research has led the world in identifying water quality problems and coming up with solutions. For Canada and the United States to fulfill the promises made in this agreement, this research, as well as pollution cleanup and prevention, must continue.
You have to continue to be vigilant, and you have to keep on top of the problem, because if you don't, it's very likely to come back.
In the face of reduced government funding, stakeholders throughout the Great Lakes are preparing for the future by studying alternative ways of financing their cleanup efforts. On the grassroots level, citizens around the lakes are continuing to restore the land and water by participating in cleanup projects, by restoring habitats. They're learning how they can enjoy the benefits of a modern economy without leaving a polluted legacy for the next generation.
I've lived in the Hamilton area all my life, and as a boy, I swam in the bay. And by the time my children were there, it was too polluted for them to do that. And I guess my personal interest is the sort of thing my grandchildren are going to be able to.
We've got to leave it better. That's one of the old Girl Scout things. When you go someplace in nature, you always leave it better than it was when you came there. I got to change things to make it better for my grandchildren and for all my students and for all the people I love.
Like this, that a rescue can be offered to an ancient sailing ship. There is another ship, one that is very long, and if her captain follows his feelings that are strong, then he'll change course in the middle of the lake. Sail for calmer waters, a safe harbor for to make, and there is a chance that he will come on the souls forsaken, who've lost all hope of ever giving back the love they've taken. Who cares if they say that you've gone round the bend? It's your life that you lead, it's on you that you depend, and the feelings that you have, you might feel them again and again. Who cares if they say that we've gone round the bend? It's our lives that we lead, it's on us that we depend, and the visions that we see, let us see them again and again.
The Maritime Discovery Center of Rochester introduces its Great Lakes Genesee program's proposed research and educational vessels. The mission of the Great Lakes Genesee program is to stimulate awareness of and appreciation for our great waterways resources, Lake Ontario, the Genesee River, and the Erie Canal. Monroe County encompasses approximately 35 miles of Lake Ontario shoreline. As a great waterways region, the Genesee River its Ontario embayment and harbor, Braddock's Bay, Irondequoit Bay, nearshore ponds, wetlands, lakeside parks, and the incomparable historic Erie Canal constitute a world-class asset. Assisted by a U.S. Department of Commerce environmental program, the Maritime Discovery Center, in conjunction with local groups, is purchasing 2 vessels of comparable size as a core part of the exciting new Great Lakes Genesee program. The vessels will be headquartered at the Genesee Rochester Harbor. The vessels are to be refitted and renamed the Ontario Sea and the Genesee. These ships were designed originally as offshore ocean fishing vessels. The Ontario Sea, currently named the Mandy Ray, was constructed in Newport, Rhode Island and outfitted in Massachusetts in 1984. It is a western rigged trawler, 120 feet overall, with a 24.5-foot beam, 14-foot draft, and 450-ton displacement. The ship has been well maintained and features very advanced navigational control and safety systems. The vessel is rugged, safe, very seaworthy, and beautifully designed inside and out. The replacement cost of the Ontario Sea as outfitted is in the $2.5 million range. The Bagatelle, perhaps the future Genesee, is also of the western rigged trawler type and was designed by the noted naval architect Bruce Washburn and constructed by his company Washburn and Doherty in Freeport, Maine in 1983. The Genesee is 80 feet overall, 21-foot beam, 9-foot draft, and 150-ton displacement. The replacement cost will be about $1 million. Initially, the vessels will house saltwater and freshwater fisheries, ecology, and historic exhibits. The Ontario Sea will eventually become a floating Great Lakes Waters Resource classroom and teaching laboratory, as well as an ecotourism vessel. The simpler, yet rugged little sister vessel, the Genesee, will serve for short or day trip education and research. Now is the time for Monroe County, Rochester, and the 3 great waterways of Lake Ontario, Genesee Valley, and the historic Erie Canal to realize their great untapped potential. The Maritime Discovery Center is a not-for-profit educational corporation and is entirely volunteer-run. We need your support. If you would like further information or wish to contribute or participate, please contact the Great Lakes Genesee program at area code 716-467-0897.
conclude.